Welcome to QHSE Talks, where we go beyond checklists and compliance to uncover what truly drives safety in the real world. Because safety isn't just about procedures or paperwork, it's about people, influence, and leadership. Think about it. Every organization talks about commitment and accountability, but where does real safety leadership actually begin? Is it something that flows from the top, through clear direction, strong policies, and firm expectations? Or does it rise from the bottom, through people who see the risks every day, speak up, and drive change from the ground up? The truth is, safety leadership works in both directions, but not always in harmony. Sometimes, the message gets lost somewhere between the boardroom and the worksite. And that's when you see the gap, the credibility gap between what's written in the policy and what's actually happening out there in the field. And here's the hard truth. People don't judge leaders by what's in a binder or on a poster. They judge them by what they see, by how leaders act, how they listen, and whether they follow through when it matters most. That's why in today's episode, we're going to break down what top-down and bottom-up leadership really mean, and why both are essential to building a culture of trust and psychological safety. Because when you strip away the titles and the layers of authority, leadership isn't about control. It's about influence. It's about creating an environment where people feel safe to speak up, to take responsibility, and to care. Not because they're told to, but because they believe in it.
So our focus today, specifically for episode 4 here, is getting past that sort of checkbox mentality.
Right.
We want to look at safety as this proactive, really critical leadership job, something built on influence, kept alive by trust, and really cemented by psychological safety.
And we need to figure out how you drive that commitment from the top, but also how do you influence change when you're, further down the ladder, looking upwards.
Okay, so to kick things off, you've got a scenario for us, one that really highlights these challenges.
Yeah, it puts these leadership demands into, immediate and pretty sharp focus. Imagine this. A new VP of operations comes in.
Okay.
And they're suddenly overseeing more than 30 industrial sites. These aren't just down the road either. They're spread across different jurisdictions. U.S. states, Canadian provinces.
Right. So complex already. And I take it these aren't like quiet little workshops.
Not even close. When we talk high risk here, the hazards are extreme, life-threatening, frankly.
Okay.
You've got operations with constant exposure to massive electrical gear. Think 35,000 volts all the way up to 120,000 volts.
Wow. Okay.
Workers are routinely dealing with potential falls from height, maybe up to 300 feet. And atmospheric dangers. Things like hydrogen sulfide, H2S, and concentrations may be 20 times higher than what's considered immediately dangerous to life and health, the IDL-H level.
20 times IDL-H. That's incredibly dangerous.
It is. And the initial look, the assessment of what was already there, it was alarming.
How so?
The existing OSH foundation was extremely poor, the policy weak, procedures basically non-existent, or if they did exist, they weren't applied consistently at all.
So a huge mess.
A huge mess. The new VP's challenge was, monumental. This wasn't about tweaking things. It was about immediately building a robust, absolutely non-negotiable system from the ground up, pretty much.
Okay.
And that demanded leadership, credibility, influence right away. From the exec suite all the way down to the front line, folks.
That duality then, top down, bottom up.
That's the core of it. That's what we really need to unpack today.
All right, let's start with the top-down piece then, the sort of non-negotiable foundation. This is where the authority comes from, right? The strategy. Now, for most people, you say OSH policy, and they picture like a laminated poster gathering dust on a notice board somewhere.
Often yellowed.
Yeah. But our source material says this is actually one of the most powerful tools a leader has. Why? What makes it more than just paper?
Because it's the official signed-off statement of commitment. It comes from the very highest level of management, the board, the CEO, whoever holds the ultimate authority.
Okay.
It defines the entire hazard management strategy for the whole organization, approved by the top. And it states really clearly that the organization is committed to managing hazards and meeting all its legal duties.
So it's like the safety constitution for the company.
That's a great way to put it. It's not a suggestion. It's organizational law, basically, backed by the highest office.
Right.
And if you're a supervisor, an employee, a contractor, you don't get to deviate from it, period.
But you mentioned something, the dissolution problem. This is where this top-down ideal often breaks down in big, complex places like the ones the VP inherited.
Absolutely. It's a huge issue. The strategy itself might be brilliantly written, signed off at the top, but often as it travels down through the layers of the hierarchy, it just dissolves.
Dissolves. How?
It loses its clarity, it loses its priority, its effectiveness just waters down. Think about that chain of command.
Yeah.
CEO approves the budget, CFO signs off the capital spend, VP allocates resources, directors worried about the schedule, supervisors just trying to get the shift done.
Right.
At every single one of those handoffs, if that commitment isn't rigorously enforced, constantly modeled from the top, the strategy just gets weaker and weaker.
Can you give us a sort of concrete example? How does that look on the ground?
Okay, think about buying equipment, procurement. The top-down policy says we use high-quality, intrinsically safe gear, no exceptions.
Right. Clear enough.
But maybe 3 levels down, you've got a procurement manager. They're under pressure to hit quarterly savings targets.
Always pressure on costs.
Always. So they choose a cheaper, maybe non-certified alternative. They argue the difference is tiny, it'll be fine.
How'd it go?
And right there, the strategy dissolved. The commitment to managing hazards just got trumped by a short-term money goal. And people see that. They judge leaders based on which priority actually wins in those moments, not what the poster says.
Okay, so back to our VP. Facing those 30 sites, 120 kV lines, IDLH gas,
Yeah.
they couldn't afford any dissolution.
No way.
So the first moves had to be immediate, really concrete, top-down, to get a functioning system up fast. What were those priority programs?
Yeah, the initial plan was very surgical. It was laser focused on controlling the biggest, deadliest risks first. This wasn't about building a, nice to have safety program. It was a survival manual.
Right.
So the list of required programs was intense and totally non-negotiable.
Let's go through that list because it really shows what that serious top-down commitment looks like in practice, especially when the stakes are that high.
Okay, it started with hazardous energy management. Absolutely crucial. Establishing zero energy state, preventing accidental startups. Lockout to gout, basically.
Bella too.
Get it. But importantly, that had to be clearly separated from high voltage work procedures.
Ah, okay. Why the separation?
Because a LOTO is about stopping work and controlling stored energy.
Yeah.
High voltage procedures are about how people work when they must interact with live equipment. Those 120,000 volt situations.
Right, different ballgame.
Totally different.
Yeah.
So that means specific rules on insulation, approach distances, specialized live line techniques, things you only need when the power has to stay on.
That distinction is vital.
Yeah.
Okay, what else was on the must-do list?
Next up, enclosed space entry protocols. Critical for those places with the high H2S concentrations we talked about.
Yeah.
So that means mandatory ventilation, continuous air monitoring, detailed rescue plans, permits for every single entry. No exceptions.
Okay.
Then mandatory risk analysis protocols, making sure every task, whether it's routine or brand new, gets formally assessed before starting.
Proactive.
Exactly. And backing that up with robust workplace inspection procedures, verifying daily that the controls identified in the risk assessment are actually in place and working.
And you need the learning piece too, right, when things do go wrong.
Absolutely critical. So accident investigation and analysis, but moving beyond just blaming the person involved, getting to the systemic root causes. Why did it happen?
Right.
Comprehensive emergency measures, tailored to those specific extreme hazards, evacuating from 300 feet up, medical response for electrocution, containing an H2S release.
Needs to be specific.
Very specific. And finally, mandatory orientation, training, and contractor management, making sure every single person, employee, or contractor who sets foot on those sites understands the risks and understands the VP's new standards, the non-negotiables.
Wow. Rolling that out across 30 different sites, different jurisdictions, sounds like a massive management challenge.
Yeah.
How do they ensure control? How do they make it stick top down?
The control is built on 2 main ideas.
Yeah.
Uniformity and localized adherence.
Okay, explain that.
So the new standards were applied across the board, starting with the highest risks first, priority 1, 2, 3. But the area directors got a really clear message. the company's requirements. Those are the absolute minimum.
The floor, not the ceiling.
Exactly. Then they are responsible for taking those minimums and adapting them to meet the specific local legal requirements in their state or province. So you ensure compliance with both corporate policy and the local law.
Makes sense.
And the key phrase here was mandatory consistent application by all supervisors, all employees, across all sites. No wiggle room, no, we do it differently here.
And this kind of commitment, it leads straight into accountability, doesn't it? That's how you stop the dissolution problem you mentioned earlier.
Accountability was built right into the structure. It wasn't an afterthought. It came through rigorous, scheduled audit programs.
Not just checking boxes, I hope.
No, definitely not. These audits weren't just looking for paperwork. They were checking the effectiveness of the written rules out on the ground. Are people actually doing it? Do they understand why?
But if they weren't?
Then strict accountability was applied, tied directly to the roles and responsibilities that had already been defined.
For example?
If your job as a supervisor includes verifying the pre-job risk assessment, and that assessment is incomplete, or it got skipped entirely, that failure is yours. You're accountable.
Oh, right.
This kind of system forces the strategy to keep its integrity as it moves down the chain, from the VD's office right to the person turning the wrench or climbing the tower.
So let's wrap up this top-down part by looking at the documents. You mentioned the policy, the procedures. How does that all fit together in a hierarchy?
Yeah, it's a clear cascade. It starts right at the top with the OSH policy. That's the highest level commitment we talked about.
The Constitution.
Right. That policy then gets translated into the detailed hazard management programs and procedures, your ALOTO procedure, your confined space entry plan, your working at height standard, and so on.
The rule books.
Exactly. And then those detailed procedures are converted into the daily forms that the frontline teams actually use. The permit to work, the checklist, the pre-job safety assessment, the inspection form.
Okay, which brings us to those forms once they're filled out. The records. Why are these seemingly everyday bits of paper so important in this system?
Because they are the ultimate tangible proof that the top-down commitment has actually been followed through on.
The evidence.
Precisely. The completed forms, the records, they're the undeniable proof that the organization's hazard management strategy was fully applied in that specific instance.
So something's missing.
If that lockout tag isn't hanging there, if the confined space permit isn't signed off by the person who did the gas monitoring, if the risk assessment is blank, it means the strategy failed right there. It wasn't executed.
Kidnap failure.
It traces directly back up that chain of accountability, right back to the leader at whatever level who failed to enforce the process they were responsible for.
Okay, so we've got the ideal top-down system mapped out. Policy, procedures, accountability, records. Looks great on paper, the theory. But now we hit reality, the disconnect, where the policy meets the people and, well, often the system kind of fractures.
Yeah, that fracture point. It's really well illustrated by something the sources call the surprise test.
The surprise test sounds intriguing.
It's actually a really simple, low-cost way for you, the listener, to diagnose the health of this in your own organization right now.
Okay, how does it work?
You need to go and ask people from each level of your hierarchy. Talk to a senior manager, talk to a supervisor, talk to some key frontline staff.
And ask them.
Ask them to summarize the company's OSH policy. Not read it off the wall, summarize it. What's the core commitment that the very top level of management made? What are the absolute non-negotiables in safety here?
And what do you usually find, especially in organizations that aren't, shall we say, fully mature in their safety culture?
You typically find a significant gap, a major discrepancy.
How so?
You'll find that the mid-level leaders, the ones who are supposed to be allocating the resources and driving the daily execution, they often have a really poor or maybe just a vague or sometimes even a completely wrong understanding of what that official top-level commitment actually says.
Wow.
And that difference, that gap between what's written at the top and what people actually understand or experience on the ground, that's an immediate red flag. It signals a failure of influence. The message isn't getting through.
Which points to a loss of integrity, doesn't it? The sources talk about this critical link between what leaders say and what they actually do.
Exactly. If that link breaks, your leadership ability just vanishes, at least when it comes to safety.
How does that spiral happen?
Well, leaders say safety is our #1 priority. It's non-negotiable.
Right.
We hear that all the time.
All the time.
But then the frontline workers see the resources getting pulled away for production. They see mandatory safety training getting canceled because the schedule's tight. They see that needed safety equipment being postponed because of budget cuts.
The reality doesn't match the words.
Not at all. And when that happens, credibility is shot. Gone.
And people are watching this constantly, aren't they? They're not judging based on the mission statement. They're judging based on what they see every day.
Absolutely. Where does the money actually go? Whose schedules get protected when there's a conflict? Who gets away with cutting corners and who doesn't? That's the real policy in their eyes.
Right.
And when that credibility is lost, it doesn't matter what your job title is. Your positional authority becomes kind of meaningless for safety.
Why?
Because why would an employee risk challenging something or take the extra time to do it right for a system they don't believe in? For leaders they don't trust. They won't. They'll just protect themselves, which usually means keeping quiet, maybe taking shortcuts.
So you've lost the moral authority to lead on safety, even if you sign the paychecks.
You've lost it, which leads to this really crucial cultural shift that has to happen at the leadership level. It's a pivot away from blaming others, toward looking inward, towards accountability.
The sources really hammer this home, don't they? Leaders must stop blaming employees or blaming circumstances when things go wrong.
This is probably the hardest leap for most organizations to make. It really is. The gut reaction, the knee-jerk impulse when there's an incident, it's to find the human error, pinpoint the willful violation.
What about the finger?
Yeah. But the fundamental shift required for a true safety leader, according to this material, is to always blame themselves first.
Blame themselves first. That feels really counterintuitive in a lot of corporate cultures where, covering your back is often the priority. How does that work? How do you actually do that?
You do it by asking very specific system-focused questions. Instead of jumping to, okay, the worker didn't use their harness, the leader must ask, what could I have done differently to get a different result?
Okay. So it forces the focus back up the chain, back to the system design, the environment.
Exactly. Let's use that 300-foot fall example we talked about.
Okay.
So a worker is up high, doesn't tie off. The immediate reaction might be, write them up. Disciplinary action.
Standard procedure in many places.
But the leader following this principle, they have to resist that urge. They need to interrogate the system first.
With what questions?
Was the required anchor point actually certified? Was it easily accessible right where they needed it? Or was it like 2 work bays away, making it a real pain to go and clip on?
Right. Practicalities.
Was the harness they were given inspected properly? Was it even the right type? Or did they just grab one that maybe looked okay but had some damage? Did I, as the leader, actually build enough time into the job schedule to do it safely? Or was the pressure to finish so intense that the worker felt forced to cut that corner? Could I have provided a better way to do the job, better supervision maybe?
So basically, the leader has to accept that they are ultimately responsible for the environment they create, the training, the gear, the schedule, the whole way the work is set up.
Yes, they are fully responsible for influencing that environment.
And if that environment contributed to the failure?
Then the leader owns the solution. They're responsible for fixing the systemic issues that allowed or even encouraged that failure to happen in the first place.
And that's how you start rebuilding credibility, presumably.
That's exactly how. By showing that accountability starts at the top. By demonstrating that you're focused on fixing the real root causes, not just punishing the symptoms.
Okay. So top-down authority needs that self-reflective accountability.
Yeah.
Let's flip the coin now. Bottom-up leadership. This feels like the really tough part.
It often is.
If you're a safety manager, a site safety pro, your job involves influencing the VP, maybe the CEO, the board, people who are way above you in the hierarchy. You don't have that formal authority over them.
It's a completely different ballgame. Top-down works through compliance, through mandates. You will do this. Bottom-up. That relies entirely 100% on the power of influence. As a safety professional trying to influence upwards, you have to realize your currency isn't your job title. It's your ability to take these sometimes vague safety concerns and turn them into concrete business reasons that make sense to the people holding the purse strings and setting the direction.
So what specific skills, what aptitudes does a safety leader need to develop to actually get good at this? This feels like where professional development really matters.
Yeah, the toolkit needs to be sharp and specific. First, absolutely solid communication skills. You need to be clear, concise, compelling, no rambling.
Get to the point.
Get to the point. Second, you need the ability to build well-structured cases based purely on documented facts. Emotion, fear-mongering. Those don't work when you're talking upwards. You need data.
Okay. Facts, not feelings.
Right. Third, you need mastery of the organizational strategy. You have to speak their language. Budgets, market share, operational efficiency, reliability. How does your safety issue impact those things?
Connected to the business.
You have to. And fourth, you need deep, intimate knowledge of the site reality and the team's needs. You have to be the unquestioned expert on what's actually happening on the ground. Your credibility rests on that.
Which links back to this core idea for bottom-up influence.
Yeah.
Turning perceptions into facts.
Exactly, because decision makers higher up, especially if they're in a remote head office, they're often working with perceptions, high-level views, like safety is just a cost center, or, well, the risk must be manageable because we haven't had a big incident recently.
It hasn't happened yet fallacy.
Precisely. They're managing based on what they know, and often what they know is pretty theoretical or maybe outdated.
So the safety leader's job is to fill that gap.
It's our responsibility to bridge that information gap. We have to help them understand the real potential consequences of that 120 kV incident or that 300-foot fall. But we have to do it using their language, the language of business risk and consequence.
Okay, so how do we do that? How do we take a perception of risk and turn it into a hard fact that makes a VP sit up and say, okay, we need to fund this?
You use objective data. You move beyond just saying it's risky. You have to quantify it.
Put numbers on it?
Put numbers on it.
Yeah.
Turn the perception of someone might get hurt into actual figures. Use your detailed risk analyses. What's the probability? What's the severity? Quantify it.
Okay.
Then tie that directly to the legal requirements. Show them exactly where the organization is non-compliant.
Yeah.
What are the potential fines? What's the legal exposure if something goes wrong? Spell it out.
But the real kicker is often the money, isn't it?
Often, yes. The financial conversion is powerful. The safety leader needs to calculate the cost of the corrective measures they're proposing.
Right, the investment needed.
But then, crucially, frame that against the potential documented cost of failure.
The cost of inaction.
Exactly. So instead of just asking for, say, $100,000 for better lockout-tagout equipment, you present a case. You show that not spending that $100 K carries, based on your analysis, maybe an 80% chance of continued noncompliance fines, and maybe a 10% chance of a catastrophic high-voltage incident. And that incident would likely cost the company $5 million in lawsuits, fines, operational downtime, reputational damage, increased insurance premiums.
Okay, now you're talking their language. Risk versus reward, investment versus potential loss.
Now, the decision maker isn't acting on a vague feeling of risk. They're acting on hard data, a business case.
And this loops back to that OSH principle again.
Yeah.
Documentation. If you made that brilliant case but didn't write it down,
then effectively it didn't happen, especially when you're trying to influence upwards on safety. The rule is what is not written down does not exist.
why so strict?
Because leaders have to meticulously document every single intervention. Record the case you presented, attach the objective data you used, clearly state the recommendations you made, and then document the decision you received from your superior. Was it approved, denied, postponed? Why?
So it creates a paper trail.
It's your professional record. It's your defense, potentially. It demonstrates you fulfilled your duty to inform. And heaven forbid, if disaster does strike later, that documentation is the undeniable proof that management was made aware of the specific documented risk.
Okay, and the final piece for bottom-up influence, persistence. It's probably rare that a big safety initiative gets a yes on the first try. What if you hit resistance? What if they say no?
The guidance from the source material is really clear on this. First, don't give up. Keep at it until you exert the influence needed to get the result, is necessary for safety.
Okay, pretty
But, and this is critical, if you are unsuccessful, if you get that no, the temptation is strong to just blame upwards. My boss is an idiot. They just don't care about safety.
Yeah, easy trap to fall into.
You have to resist that.
Sounds like that self-blame lesson again, but applied upwards.
Yeah. It's exactly that. It's the ultimate test of leadership maturity, maybe. Instead of blaming your boss for refusing, the effective bottom-up leader holds themselves accountable. They ask, okay, what could I have done differently to get the yes?
How could I have been more persuasive?
Exactly. Was my data not compelling enough? Did I fail to connect my proposal clearly enough to the company's current big strategic push?
Yeah.
Maybe they're focused on reliability this quarter or quality. Does I not explain the legal risks clearly? It always comes back to your ability to influence. Every no is just feedback for how to reframe your argument next time.
Okay, so we got the top-down engine, policy, accountability, and the bottom-up engine, influence, persistence, based on facts. But what holds the whole thing together? What makes it actually work day to day?
The foundation, the absolute bedrock that allows both of those engines to run smoothly. And that foundation is built entirely on trust and psychological safety.
And why is that so fundamental?
Because without psychological safety, all those systems we just talked about, the risk assessments, the inspections, the procedures, the policy itself, they'll ultimately fail.
How?
Think about it. If workers feel unsafe speaking up, if they fear, blame, ridicule, or punishment, what will they do when they see a problem?
They'll keep quiet.
They'll remain silent, and when they're silent, the system becomes blind. It masks the real risks bubbling under the surface. You end up with this illusion of compliance, this facade that everything's okay, until something catastrophic happens and rips that facade away, exposing all the hidden danger.
So the safety leader's job is to actively fight that silence.
Actively cultivate a climate where silence is the anomaly, not the norm, where speaking up about risk is expected and valued.
Right. Let's give our listeners a practical tool here. Sources propose a 5-part trust test. You mentioned it briefly. Let's run through it as a self-assessment.
Okay, this is something any leader can use right now. Think about your own teams, maybe across those 30 high-risk sites or just in your department. The honest answers to these 5 questions will tell you a lot about the real level of trust you've managed to build. Ready?
Ready. Number 1.
1. Speaking up or remaining silent. If your team members see a potential flaw in a safety procedure, maybe the LOTO process, or they see a colleague taking a shortcut, are they genuinely comfortable speaking up about it? Or do they stay silent, worried they'll get shot down, labeled a troublemaker, or cause problems for their mate?
Okay. Speak up or stay silent. Number 2.
2. Doing the job the right way or the quick way. Are your people truly committed to following the procedure exactly, doing it the right way, even if it adds, say, 30 minutes to the task? Or are they consistently feeling pressured to choose the quickest way to get the job done because of aggressive production targets or schedules?
Right way versus quick way. Got it. Number 3.
3. Admitting mistakes or hiding them. If someone makes a small error, maybe they forget to check one setting on the gas monitor before entry or they bump a piece of equipment. Do they feel safe enough to admit that mistake so everyone can learn from it and maybe prevent a bigger issue? Or is the culture one where they hide it, cross their fingers, and hope nobody notices?
Admit or hide. Number 4.
4. Engaging in safety initiatives or undermining them. When you roll out a new safety program or initiative, are people actively and, maybe even enthusiastically engaging? Are they giving constructive feedback? Or are they just passively undermining it? The eye rolls in the meeting, the complaining in the break room.
Engage or undermine. And number 5.
5. Sharing ideas or holding them in. Do your frontline people, the ones doing the hazardous work like that 120 kV switching, do they feel comfortable sharing their ingenious ideas for making it safer because they trust they'll actually be listened to? Or do they keep those ideas to themselves, convinced that management won't take them seriously, won't invest the time or resources anyway?
Share or hold back. Okay. So, if the answers across those 5 tend towards silence, the quick way, hiding mistakes, undermining, holding back ideas,
then you have a significant trust deficit, a big one. And that deficit, no matter how brilliant your written policies are, no matter how rigorous your audits seem, it will fundamentally sabotage every single safety system you have.
because the policy is just the intention.
But trust is the mechanism that makes it actually happen on the ground. No trust, no execution, simple as that.
So how do we build it? If we run that test and don't like the results, how do we actively build that foundation of trust?
The sources break it down really clearly into 3 essential pillars. 3 things leaders must consistently show, consistently demonstrate through their actions.
Okay, pillar number 1.
Pillar 1 is ability, or maybe better put, perceived competence.
What does that mean exactly?
It's the team's perception of whether the leader actually knows what they're talking about. Do they understand the safety processes? Do they have the necessary technical knowledge? Do they grasp the operational realities? A leader overseeing that 120 kV work needs to demonstrate they understand the immense danger involved.
Right. You need to know your stuff. But what if you don't? Leaders can't know everything.
That's the critical point here. This isn't about pretending to be an expert on everything. That actually destroys trust. If you fake it, you instantly damage the other 2 pillars.
So the real test of ability comes when you don't know the answer.
Exactly. That's the moment of truth. When a team member asks a tough technical question, maybe, why are we using this specific type of insulating glove? Is it rated correctly for this task? And the leader genuinely doesn't know the detailed answer.
What should they do?
The leader who builds trust demonstrates humility. They have to be comfortable saying, you know what? That's a great question. I don't know the specific technical reason offhand, but I'm going to find out. And then, crucially, they commit to finding the answer and discussing it with the team. That honesty, that transparency builds trust. Bluffing absolutely kills it.
Okay. So ability demonstrated with humility. Pillar number 2.
Pillar 2 is integrity. This is about perceived honesty and openness. And it goes right back to that say-do gap we discussed earlier.
Walking the talk.
Walking the talk, consistently. It means leaders reliably follow through on their commitments. If you promise the team a new set of fall protection harnesses by Friday, they need to arrive on Friday, not get bumped because something else came up.
Right.
It means keeping your teams genuinely informed about changes that affect them. And it means operating based on your stated values like safety first, rather than shifting priorities based on politics or short-term financial swings. If safety truly is non-negotiable, the leader has to prove it every day with how they allocate resources and time.
Makes sense. Ability, integrity. And the third pillar.
The third pillar is benevolence. This is the perceived degree of care the leader shows. And honestly, this is often the one most overlooked by leaders who are just focused on rules and compliance.
Benevolence. So caring.
Yeah, demonstrating genuine care, empathy, even kindness. It's the leader showing they understand the risks people are taking, acknowledging the inherent danger of working near 120,000 volts day in, day out, showing they appreciate the skill and the risk involved.
How does that look practically?
It can be as simple as actively listening when someone raises a concern, even if it seems small, or maybe it's an organizational issue rather than a purely technical safety one. Just hearing them out properly and providing sincere acknowledgement for good work, for effort, for catching a potential problem.
So it's more than just a quick good job. It's about showing you see them as people, not just units of labor.
That's it, exactly. For a safety leader, especially in high-risk fields, showing you care is not a sign of weakness. It doesn't undermine your authority. It's actually a necessary ingredient for creating that psychological safety.
How so?
Because if your team believes that you genuinely care about their well-being, about them as individuals, they are far, far more likely to trust the systems you put in place, to believe the policy actually means something, and to proactively step up and help manage the risks themselves. They feel safe with you.
Ability, integrity, benevolence. The 3 pillars of trust. Okay, so once we start building that trust, that psychological safety, the culture itself starts to shift, right?
Absolutely. The organization begins to evolve, and Hudson's original safety culture maturity model gives us a really useful framework for understanding these stages of evolution. It helps us see where those 30 sites the VP inherited probably started and where they ultimately needed to aim for.
Right. Let's walk through the stages. Where would those sites, with their poor policies and non-existent procedures, likely have landed on Hudson's scale initially?
Oh, they were almost certainly languishing down between the bottom 2 levels. Apathetic and reactive.
Okay, tell us about the apathetic level. That sounds pretty bad.
It is the bottom rung. At this level, management has basically adopted a blame the workers culture. When incidents happen, they're almost universally seen as the workers' fault. They were stupid, they were careless, or they deliberately broke a rule. There's little to no recognition that management decisions or system flaws could possibly contribute. Safety is just seen as a problem caused by people at the sharp end.
Okay, not a great starting point. What about the next step up, the reactive level? Is that much better?
It's slightly more mature, but still deeply flawed. At the reactive level, safety does become a priority, but usually only after something bad happens.
Reacting to incidents.
Exactly. Or maybe when the injury stats start to climb and regulators start sniffing around. Senior managers tend to respond by cracking down, increasing punishments, maybe rolling out a basic behavior-based safety BBS program. But they're still operating under the assumption that most incidents are caused purely by frontline worker behavior.
So they're treating the symptoms, not the disease.
Precisely. They react to the spike in injuries by tightening the rules for the workers, maybe more discipline. They're not yet digging deep into the systemic issues, the scheduling pressures, the inadequate training, the poorly designed equipment that might actually trace right back to decisions made much higher up.
That's a really key distinction for our listeners, isn't it? The focus is still on compliance and reaction, not on understanding the true root causes within the system.
Absolutely. And to move beyond being just reactive, you have to fundamentally shift that lens. You have to start looking at why the failures are happening systemically.
So what's the first sign that a culture is starting to genuinely move forward?
That comes when you reach the involving level. This marks the real beginning of trust starting to take root.
The involving level. How is that different from just, say, putting up a suggestion box?
It's much deeper than that. Companies at the involving stage recognize that getting the workforce actively participating isn't just a nice idea, it's essential. Teams are genuinely invited in to help find solutions, to contribute their expertise to controlling hazards. They're not just being asked to tick off on decisions management has already made.
So their input is actually valued and used.
Yes. And that willingness for management to truly listen to and integrate the knowledge from the front line, that signals that trust is growing. Employees, in turn, become more willing to genuinely work with management on safety because they see the effort, they see the resources being committed, they feel heard. It's the first stage where that bottom-up influence we talked about starts to get some real traction.
Okay. Involving. What's the next major leap?
The next big jump is to the proactive level. This is where safety stops being just a program and starts becoming truly strategic, integrated into the business.
How does the thinking change at the proactive level?
The fundamental belief system shifts across the whole organization. Most employees now believe safety is important not just because they're told to, but because it makes sense ethically and economically.
Shared value.
Shared value. And crucially, leaders and staff accept shared responsibility for safety outcomes. They understand that incidents aren't caused by single factors, but by a complex mix. And they actively look for those root causes, often tracing them right back to systemic flaws, including management decisions about budgets, schedules, or how processes are designed.
So the focus shifts dramatically, away from who broke the rule towards why did our system allow or encourage that rule to be broken?
Yes, exactly. They start seeing failures not as blame opportunities, but as valuable information, free lessons almost.
Okay.
They're actively looking for ways to learn as an organization. They use leading indicators, trying to predict where the next potential failure point might be based on system complexity, operational pressures, near misses. They're trying to get ahead of the curve.
Proactive, not reactive, makes sense.
Mm.
And then the ultimate goal, the top of the ladder, the integrated level. How is this different from just being really, really good at being proactive?
It's a state where top-down commitment and bottom-up expertise become completely seamless. They work in perfect harmony.
How so?
Leaders at this stage fully trust their teams. They genuinely view the workforce as the subject matter experts when it comes to the risks of the work they do every day.
Right.
And because they've successfully built that climate of high trust and psychological safety we talked about, the workforce willingly accepts full responsibility for managing their own risks. They even start auditing the system themselves, holding management accountable too.
Wow. So the key idea here is that safety isn't seen as this separate thing anymore. Like now we do work, now we do safety.
Exactly. Safety isn't separate from the work. Safety is simply how the organization does business. It's baked into everything.
So safety, reliability, quality, they all merge.
They become indistinguishable. The whole focus shifts away from just preventing accidents towards ensuring total system reliability, continuous learning, and just doing the work well every single time. At this integrated level, that VP's non-negotiable policy we started with, it gets executed flawlessly, not because people are scared of getting caught, but because every single employee sees adhering to it as a fundamental part of their professional competence and pride in their work.
Okay. That gives us a clear pathway for cultural improvement. Let's try and wrap this up then.
Sure.
This whole conversation about leadership duality, it really shows that managing safety effectively, especially where the risks are high, is incredibly complex. It demands constant effort, looking both up and down the organization.
It really does. You need that unwavering top-down commitment made real through clear, non-negotiable policies and rigorous accountability. But that top-down structure is essentially hollow. It won't work without effective bottom-up influence, where safety leaders on the ground are skilled at turning those frontline realities, those perceptions, into objective documented facts that compel action from their superiors.
And underpinning both of those.
Underpinning absolutely everything. The policies, the audits, the influence attempts, has to be that solid foundation built by demonstrating ability, integrity, and benevolence. That's what earns you the trust and psychological safety needed for people to actually engage.
So the systems you design are only ever going to be as effective as the culture that actually uses them day to day.
Couldn't have said it better.
And the big takeaway for you, the listener, as a safety leader, no matter where you sit in the hierarchy.
The ultimate message is that you have full responsibility for influencing and controlling what's happening in your sphere of operation, both upwards towards the strategy setters and downwards towards the people doing the work.
That's a heavy responsibility.
It is. It's a heavy but absolutely essential burden for anyone who takes safety leadership seriously. It demands constant vigilance, constant effort, and that crucial self-reflection we talked about, asking, what could I do differently?
Okay, so let's leave everyone with a final thought, something to really mull over, tying together the threads we've discussed today.
Go for it.
Right. If you were to run that 5-part trust test in your head right now, honestly assessing if your people speak up or stay silent, admit mistakes or hide them, and then immediately after, you imagined asking your team to take that OSH policy summary test, gauging how well they actually understand the top-level safety commitment.
Okay.
Would the combined results, those two mental checks, confirm that you're maybe still operating down at that reactive level of safety culture? Or could you genuinely say you've earned the trust, built the psychological safety, and achieved the shared understanding required to be heading towards that integrated pinnacle, where safety is just how you do business?
A challenging question to end on. Thank you for joining us for this discussion on QHSE Talks.
We'll catch you next time.